Hi, and welcome back to Lisa's Stamp Studio. My name is Lisa Curcio. That brand new annual catalog is gorgeous, and among the stamp sets is one called To a Wild Rose. Love flowers, and this card is a little out of the ordinary in the color concept. I'm pairing black with Mango Melody. Here's the card I'm going to be demonstrating for you today, but I have an alternative to this card that I'll also be sharing with you. If this is your first time visiting my YouTube channel, you're going to be able to find the cutting dimensions and the supplies linked down in the video description below. And while you're here, please subscribe to my YouTube channel if you already haven't done so. Be sure to click that small bell icon that's next to it. That will give you notifications of when I'm live here on YouTube, as well as when I upload a new video. Let's head over to the stamp table and let's get started on today's card. Here's a better close-up of that card we're going to be creating together today. We're going to do a little bit of heat embossing and some die cutting and punching, and you're going to love this stamp set. As I mentioned in the introduction, make sure you stick with me to the end because I have an alternative to this card that I want to share with you. I'm going to work on the embossing first. This is a 1/2 inch piece by 5.5 inch piece of basic black cardstock. And I'm going to prep the surface in order to get ready for the heat embossing. And I'll be using the Embossing Buddy. There's an anti-static powder inside this bag that will actually tell the embossing powder itself not to stick where there is an ink. So it'll help repel those small little flakes that you get left behind when you're heat embossing. I'm going to go ahead and get my embossing powder all ready to go. I'm going to remove the cap and I'm going to place it inside a coffee filter. I actually love to use these because I'm able to pour the excess powder back inside the bottle. Using my Versamark ink and the words from the stamp set, Well Wishes, I've chosen Get Well, and I'll go ahead and I'll ink that up. And I'm going to stamp that here near the upper side. Then very quickly before that dries, I'm going to come in here over my coffee filter and I'm going to sprinkle it generously with the white embossing powder. And now I'm ready to heat set it. I have my heat tool here and there are two speeds. So there's speed 1 and speed 2. Speed 2 is obviously the highest and the hottest. So we'll go ahead and turn that on and then we're going to heat set this. Now I know it's a little bit loud, but I'm going to give you a couple tips. Don't go crazy being all over the place because you're going to find that it's difficult to keep up with where you left off as the powder progresses and turns. So that powdery finish is going to turn into a white enamel look. And this way you're able to progress down the paper as the powder turns. You don't want to overheat the image, otherwise it will scorch. I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to work on a piece of Whisper White cardstock. I'm going to bring in my Memento black ink pad, and I'm going to be using the stamp set To a Wild Rose. This is offered individually or it's offered as a bundle with coordinating dies. There's some great lattice pieces, a frame, and some other accessory pieces inside of here. And now I can finally show you the brand new annual catalog. The one thing I absolutely love about this new catalog is how they have laid out all the bundles inside. So for example, you're going to find that there's a preview of all the bundles that are offered. Now bundles mean the stamp set with the coordinating die or the punch, and of course there's a sample next to it. Big bold numbers to tell you exactly where to go to find those products. And you're going to find To a Wild Rose right here, and it indicates it's on page 141 of the annual catalog. If you don't already have a current Stampin' Up! Demonstrator and you're interested in purchasing Stampin' Up! Supplies, I would be more than happy to send you a complimentary copy of the catalog. Head over to lisasstampstudio.com, click on the Contact Me button, and I'll be happy to obtain your address and your full name in order to send that to you. This stamp set is what we call two-step stamping, and in this case it actually can be three-step, which is how I'm going to use it today. You're going to see there's an outline image, which is fabulous because for those of you that like to color in, you can certainly do that. And then these other images fit over this to give it a 3D look, which is what we're going to use it for today. I also want to provide a tip about this stamp. As I was using it, I found it kind of difficult to line up the other pieces. So I'm going to peel this back and I'm going to show you. Because it's photopolymer and it means it's clear. Do you see the black dot that I placed here? All I did was I picked a specific area of the stamp. I used a fine Sharpie marker and I made a very gentle dot there. You don't want to pierce the photopolymer, but I just made a small dot. And then once I identified where that was, I went ahead and made the exact same dot on the exact same placement on the other stamps as well, which made it easier for me to line up. Let me show you what I mean. So I have my dot here on the left, and that's where I'm going to use all my pieces to make alignment easy. I'm going to use my Memento ink pad. Whenever the ink pad is very closely related in size to the stamp, I actually prefer to turn it face up. That's going to mean I'm not going to miss an area when I'm providing ink to the stamp. Again, making sure my dot is on the left. I know it's difficult to see now that I've inked it. I'll go ahead and stamp, and I'm very careful to make sure that I'm tracing out that image. I'm switching over now to the Mango Melody ink pad. And if you look at these stamps very carefully, you're going to see a distinct difference. You're going to see that this has some rigid lines and some detail, where this one really looks more like a hologram, doesn't it? That's because they're each going to lay ink differently on the image. So I'm going to start with the lighter one here, and you're going to see my black dot here, which is this area here. I'll ink up my stamp, so I'm traveling to ink it up. This pad's a little bit bigger than the Memento. And then I'm going to line up that area the very best that I can, and then I'll stamp. Lots of firm, even pressure. Again, you want to make sure you get all the ink out. And you can see it provides a very light coverage of ink, which is fabulous if this is exactly what you're looking for. But I'm going to go ahead and use the detailed one as well over the top of those images. My dot is here. I'm going to go ahead and ink this up as well. Lining up my dot to this edge here, I'm going to stamp. Do you see how it's given it some extra detail? You're going to notice that this image is quite a bit lighter than the original one I made. It looks like it's time I re-ink my ink pad. And while you're here with me, let's go ahead and do that. You'll need to have the re-inker that's conducive to the same color ink pad that you're using. And I will give you a tip. Make sure you always are reading it to make sure you're re-inking it properly. Boy, I have made that mistake over the years. Go ahead and add several drops of the re-inker to the ink pad. I like to work around the circumference and then down the middle. A little goes a long way, so don't go crazy squeezing too much out. And my best kept secret for spreading that ink is a plastic spoon. You want to use the smooth edge here. You don't want to use any of this area and risk ripping the foam. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that ink and I'm going to swirl it inside the ink pad and move it around. I'm distributing the ink as evenly as I can. Remember, you can always add more ink should you need it, but to remove it, you would actually have to dab the ink pad on scratch paper or cardstock in order to reduce the coverage. Let's do this one more time and let's see the difference. Certainly a big difference, isn't there? Remember to keep your ink pads well inked and you'll get a beautiful crisp color every single time. I've got my die cutting machine here, so I'm going to go ahead and die cut that rose. Now you might be wondering, did you provide the same marker? You know, I initially did, but over time it wore away. So I know I'm going to go ahead and just kind of turn this, and I know that this pointy side here is where I've made the mark on my stamp. I'll go ahead and place this over the top, and we'll go ahead and crank that through. While I have my die cutting machine out, I'm going to go ahead and use an additional die from that die set. I'm going to place this here on my scrap basic black cardstock, cover it up, and crank this one through as well. With that same piece of scrap basic black cardstock, I'm going to use the leaf punch. I'm going to punch out 2 leaves from here. I decided I didn't want to stamp them. I wanted them just solid to make my card a little bit more bold. But there is a beautiful leaf image in this stamp set, and of course there are dies to coordinate with it. Now we're ready to put everything together. This is 4 1/4 by 11. Remember, all the cutting dimensions are down in the video description below if you are here visiting from YouTube. I scored it ahead of the video, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fold it. I like to use my bone folder for that nice crisp crease. I'm going to bring in my silicone craft sheet to help keep my work surface sticky free. I've cut a 3/4 of an inch by 5.5 inch piece of coordinating cardstock. This is also Mango Melody. I'm going to add some adhesive to the back side using my snail adhesive. This is why I like the silicone craft sheet, because if I hang off the edges, I don't have to worry about this getting sticky. Adhesive, liquid glue, and hot glue, and even glue dots will not stick to this. I'm going to turn this horizontally to make it easier for my hand, and I'm going to line this up right along the edge. Remember that piece that we did the heat embossing? This one is next. Back to my silicone craft sheet, and I'm going to run the adhesive the vertical way, straight up and down, all the way down my edge. And I'm going to turn that horizontally as well. And I'm going to leave a very small margin of white between those 2 layers, looking to line them up the best that I can. And then I'll tack that in place. Here's our rose. We're going to go ahead and assemble that, and I'm going to use dimensionals for that. So I'm going to flip that over. These pre-cut pieces of phone tape make life really, really easy. I'm going to use 3 of them, and I'm going to cluster them to the center so I can tuck my other pieces behind it. If you put the dimensionals too close to the outside, you're going to have to cut away some of your punched or die cut images to get them to fit. I'm just going to kind of gauge where I want this. I'm going to place this one here. This piece here that I die cut, I'm going to go ahead and just add a glue dot down here near the bottom. Of course, you can use a little bit of liquid glue if you prefer. I'm going to peel back and reveal just one. I'm going to press that down here near the base. I'm not worried about it hanging over since it won't be visible. I'm going to lift that and then tuck that down inside. Remember our leaves? Well, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to flip those over, and I'm going to use my silicone craft sheet again, because any adhesive that falls off of there is going to fall on here. And then I'm going to tuck these in place as well. So I'm going to put one up here, and then I'll do the same thing with this one, and then I'll place that other leaf down here at the bottom. Very pretty and very simple. Here's the variation I wanted to share with you. This one has 2 flowers on it. Do you see this one? And you might be wondering where it's coming from. It is actually the center of this larger flower. So all I did was I took my scissors and I cut around there, because there is not a die for that smaller flower itself. Just got a little bit creative and used that stamp in an additional way. Which one do you like better? Do you like the single rose or do you like the double rose? Leave me a comment below. I'm so glad that you've joined me today. If you have enjoyed today's video, please give it a thumbs up here on YouTube. That is a like. It makes them and I both very happy. Thank you so much for joining me today. I look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great day.